if you could just tell me about, just sort of generally about the home and its significance in American history.
Sure. Well, the Josiah Quincy House was built in 1770 by Colonel Josiah Quincy, and it was owned by successive generations of the family until the 1890s. The family preserved a great deal of their heirlooms and stories along with the house, and descendants of the house donated the house to Historic New England in the 1930s. So the house not only tells the story of a colonial mansion, but also a later summer house that was used by generations in the mid-19th century, and the story of kind of the family preserving their own history, and what that now means within the history of New England as a whole.
And so it is open for some tours, right, in the summer? And
yes, we're open for selected dates between June and October. We also do school programs for elementary school groups, and we're always happy to open the house by appointment for special groups or other programs as well.
Mm-hmm. What's one of the most sort of surprising recent finds related to the house that...
Sure. Well, just a couple years ago, we found out that the house was used as a nursing home in the 1930s. We knew that it was owned by a couple that was not part of the Quincy family for a period between the 1890s and the 1930s, but we didn't know until a woman came for a tour one day and told us that she had actually lived in the house when she was a child, and her parents had rented the house from those owners and used it as a nursing home, or what they called a convalescent home, during the Depression for a few years. So that was an entirely new chapter of the history that we hadn't heard at all before, and now have more information about. Did an interview with the woman who lived here, gathered some photographs from her, and now all of that information has been added to the Historic New England archives.
So in the 30s, then, at least, like when it was a convalescent home, most of these houses would have been around here in the area?
Yes, most of the houses around the Quincy house here, were built right from the 1890s, from the time that the house was sold, and in the early decades of the 20th century. So the neighborhood really sprung up in that about 20 or 30 year period.
I had wondered if from this house, could people have seen the water easier before all the development and all the houses?
Definitely. We know for a fact that especially Colonel Josiah Quincy would go up to the top of the house, up to the monitor roof, and look out those small windows, and he could see all the way down to the bay. And he also, during the Revolution, reported on the movements of ships in the harbor, and gave that information to George Washington and others in the Continental Army.
And you had mentioned when we had a tour earlier also that style of architecture, the monitor roof, is a pretty rare thing.
It is a rare style, and as far as we know, this is the first example of it in the States. So the house is a National Historic Landmark, and that's part of the reason why, because of this unique feature that, as far as we know at this point, is the earliest.
Now, the Historic New England manages a number of other properties, is that right?
Yes, we have 36 historic sites throughout New England, and we are celebrating our centennial this year in 2010. So we've been around for 100 years, preserving and presenting not only the houses and the buildings, but also the stories of the people who lived within them.
What are some other of the homes that...
Sure, we have a variety of sites all the way from the 17th century to the 20th century. There's the Otis House in downtown Boston, which was home to a prominent lawyer and real estate developer in the Federal era. The Walter Gropius House in Lincoln, Massachusetts, which was home to the famous Bauhaus architect. Beauport in Gloucester, which was the home of an interior designer in the early 20th century, and then a lot of 17th century buildings, first period buildings, especially throughout the North Shore of Massachusetts as well, which preserved the very first generation of building styles in the colonies.
Are there plans sort of with the celebration of the centennial, are there plans for sort of new initiatives?
Yes, actually, we're for the first time that we know of in our history, we're opening all 36 of our houses on one day, on June 5th of this year. We're launching a passport program this year where members of Historic New England will receive a passport and they can go to all those different sites and get stamps. So they are encouraged to visit all of them. We're launching a new website this year as well, completely revamped with a lot more content information about all of our houses, and a variety of other special programs and events throughout the year as well that we hope will continue through the next century, not just for this one year.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.